It is a day for celebration because the Age of Apocalypse has started. Hello and welcome to Nelson All Over Cards. Today's a really exciting day because we just got a new Marvel Champions expansion box previewed from the FFG website. I am so pumped. It is Age of the Apocalypse. We got some new villains, we got some new heroes, and this is how I'm going to be kind of covering the news. We're going to have a couple of videos. This video is going to be focused on the heroes and the aspect cards. Probably early next week, I'm going to put another video out all about the encounters that were previewed, as well as next week on Wednesday evening. Stay tuned for exactly when it's going to happen. We're going to have another content creator roundtable live stream where we're going to be talking about the expansion. So I've assembled a team and we're going to be working together to talk about it and pick each other's brains about the new encounter. So make sure that you follow along, subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss any of those videos coming out. But I am way too excited to talk about these heroes to do any more of a preamble, so let's just dive in and talk about the first hero in this box, Bishop. Bishop's all about resource cards, which Bishop has been one of the heroes that has broken my brain a little bit more from trying to understand and analyze him, but we'll talk about that here in a second. In his alter ego side, Lucas Bishop has a 12 hand size with 12 HP. Wow, with a 6 hand size and a recovery of 4. This is going to be nice because we are actually going to be taking some damage with Lucas. He is a mutant and temporal traded, and he has a response called Temporally Displaced, which says that after you change to this form, you can add a temporal card in your discard pile to your hand. Cards in a card game is nice, and it can allow you to grab a lot of cards that are already in his kit. I don't think that there are any aspect or basic cards that we've had previous to this expansion. So we're really kind of looking at the cards that are coming in this expansion and maybe some ones in the future. But really, it's going to allow you to be flexible, grab the card that you need, and it's going to be nice. When you flip his card over into hero form, Bishop has a 2/2/1 stat line with a 5 hand size. He's temporal and X-Men traded. So both of these heroes are X-Men traded. I was kind of, in the discussions of trying to figure out exactly how they were going to be doing the traits. We were wondering if they're going to be X-Men, X-Factor, because we haven't seen any X-Factor, but Caliban calls out X-Factor, X-Force, because it's kind of been, X-Force was the previous box, and so we're kind of curious how it's going to work out. It looks like we're going X-Men, which is excellent because there's a lot of really cool X-Men cards out there. He has the energy absorption ability. This is a response that says after he takes any amount of damage from an attack, you can discard the number of cards equal to the amount of damage that he just took and add each resource card discarded into your hand. Bishop's going to be rich. He has a couple of resources in his kit, at least 2, potentially more. The article is kind of a little nebulous on how many stored energy cards he's going to have, but stored energy is a physical energy card, resource card. It's temporal traded, so you can grab it with his temporally displaced response whenever you change to alter ego. It's a double, so you can just maybe play an ally, use whatever you need. Use Cerebro when you're down in alter ego to get an ally that you can then use temporally displaced to pay for, which you grabbed with your temporally displaced response. So there's going to be a lot of interesting deck building that goes into it. We'll talk a little bit more about it later in the video, but I want to talk about it a little bit right now because having a lot of resources in your deck, I think, can be a bad thing. Now, he has a lot of cards that deal with resources, but it'll be interesting to see where that balance is, where we want to increase the number of resources in our deck. If you watch the video that I did with Villain Theory, we talked about kind of a rule of thumb being around 7 resource cards in your deck. I don't think that's going to be the case with Bishop. I think Bishop's going to push that number and try and mess with it a little bit, and then try and figure out what you can use to spin those resources on. But what is even cooler about his ability is that a lot of the cards also synergize with resource cards. So this is where my brain starts to melt even more, because not only are you going to be spending resource cards to pay for cards, you have cards like his rifle, which is a temporal and weapon traded card that says you can exhaust his rifle, you can choose an enemy and deal 1 damage for each resource card in your hand, and it gains range. So Now your resource cards are doing something other than just paying for cards, and you may not be too sad if you like get a resource flush hand. If you draw, we've all been there where we draw 3 doubles and then the 2 power-ups, and you're like, okay, well, I don't know what to do with my life. Now this rifle is doing 5 damage because you have 5 cards. It's an interesting upgrade. I am still trying to figure out, and I guess I won't know until I put him on the table and actually play and see how many resource cards that we're going to be putting into his deck. But if we kind of normalize this around like Domino's pistol, where if you have 2 resource cards, then you're going to be dealing 2 damage, which is kind of what the pistol is on average doing. And so Domino gets 2 of those. Maybe it's not fair to compare him to Domino because Domino is really good, but I'm starting to think that flooding the deck full of resource cards is not going to be the worst thing in the world. We'll talk about resource sinks here in a little bit, but another upgrade that deals with his resources is called his uniform or Bishop's uniform. That states that after you resolve energy absorption, which is his hero ability, you can exhaust this and heal 1 for each resource card in your hand. This is going to be really cool because if you're discarding a ton of resource cards, you get to put those into your hand and then heal. So the epic challenge or whatever I want to try and do is take like a hit of 4 and then discard 4 resource cards, heal those up, and then have a handful of just cash and see what we're going to be doing with that. But I think if we are playing Bishop, we probably want at least 1 resource card in his hand at all times to take effect of his rifle. And so hopefully we're getting that just kind of on average. And we can set it up so that we can heal whenever we use the energy absorption. And so Bishop's going to be interesting. I don't know how good he's going to be, but I do think it will be very satisfying to play. Supercharged is the resource sink that came in his kit. Now we probably will run other resource sinks in his kit, but Supercharged is an upgrade that kind of makes him feel similar to his Justice ally. It's a 0 cost upgrade that you can discard a resource card from your hand to place a charge counter there, and then whenever you make a basic attack, you can then discard this card to get +2 for the attack for each charge counter up to +8. So now Bishop's swinging for like 10. If you're discarding doubles for this, it may be a little bit under that efficiency curve, right? 1 resource card, say like Digging Deep or Aggressive Energy or something like that, translates into 2 damage, which is good, right? 1 for 2 is really good. Now if we're doing doubles, 2 for 2 is under the cost curve, but you're also getting the benefit from like his uniform and rifle, so I'm not 100% sure how to analyze that. The cost curve, the efficiency curve seems to really be wonky, and I'm here for it. I love the shakeup for these types of cards, but I do think that this will be a nice sink in order to kind of push for a finishing move, right? You get 10 damage for an attack. That's in solo is going to be a decent chunk of that villain health, or you can take out a really nasty minion or something like that. He does have an attack card that was previewed called Concussive Blast. It's not the one from the Under Attack modular either. It is a hero specific card. It's a 3 for 6, and if you pay for it using your resource card, which ideally we are going to be able to, then you can ready Bishop. It seems interesting with the activation. If you just use his basic attack without even thinking about charging that up, then it becomes a 3 for 8 with his basic attack, which is right on that efficiency curve, but he also has a 2 thwart. So you can break that up. You can thwart, play this card, ready, attack. You can thwart twice. You can hit for 6, thwart for 4. So the flexibility that comes with this type of card is going to be really nice. And so I like this card. We'll see how it goes. It's a 3 cost card, which is expensive, but if you're flooding your deck with resources, ideally you're going to be able to draw into it. And then finally, the last thing that we're going to be talking about with Bishop is that he is another hero that has multiple signature allies. He has 2. The first one up is Malcolm. He is a temporal X-Men, and he's 3 cost ally with a 1/2/3 stat line. He has an ability that says that we can discard a resource card from our hand and ready Malcolm. If it has a printed physical resource, the card that we discarded, you can heal 1 damage from Malcolm. So it's another sink into a card that's on the table. So I see Malcolm and the next card that we're going to be talking about being on the table fairly frequently because we want to be taking damage from our from attacks. Maybe not all of the villain attacks, but I'm curious how frequently we're going to be using chump blockers with Bishop, because we want to be triggering the energy absorption. And so it's just, I don't know. He's weird. He's crazy. He's wonky. I love it. But Malcolm is interesting because most resource cards that you add into our deck are wild. And so this one won't be able to trigger any of the wild, but like strength and his stored energy, his resource card can trigger it. And it's just going to be a nice sync and get some extra damage or activations if you do flood that hand. However, I think the cooler and stronger ally is Randall. Randall follows the same form as Malcolm, but he's a better thwarter. He's a 3-cost 2/1/3 rather than a 1/2/3. And he has the same action, but with lightning resources. So same limitations, same stored energy, all that. But I guess also Power of Flight could pay for this if you wanted to throw Power of Flight. But I don't think that's a good call, but I'm sure that there's going to be a really fun deck build out there that's all about aerial stuff with him, and we'll run Power of Flight and have a good time. So kind of the overall thoughts on Bishop is he's really going to like resource sinks. Now there's a video that I'm linking here that talks about resource sinks, and I think Bishop's going to become the poster boy of that video, because if we're running to run and have resources in our hands, we want things to be able to do with those resources. So I think cards like Machine Man, where you can pump him full of resources, Lockjaw, being able to play Lockjaw from our discard pile, cards like Make the Call, being able to just get multiple ways to pay for a lot of expensive cards, I think is going to be really key and really interesting to make a deck build for him. So we'll see how he works. I do think he's going to thrive in leadership, because like him being rich, he has a lot of expensive cards in leadership, a lot of allies in leadership, as well as leadership leaning into a lot of card draw with like strength in numbers. I think will work really well. Strength in numbers, exhaust allies to draw the number of cards equal to the allies you've exhausted. So a couple of things. If you draw resources, you're powering up his rifle, or if you have resources in your hand, you're drawing cards that you can use to pay for those. So I really think that, just initial thought, strength in numbers, card draw, a lot of cards, Nick Fury, that kind of stuff is going to work pretty well for Bishop. I think he's going to be good in leadership, and that's great because he's coming with a leadership precon, but we will talk about leadership precon after we talk about our next hero, but I do have timestamps, so if you want to jump to that right now, you absolutely can. But the second hero in the box, I am more excited for, and that's Magik. I'm so pumped about this hero. Ilyana Rasputin on her alter ego side has a 6 hand size, 10 HP, and 3 recovery. She's mutant and mystic traded. Oh, mystic traded. It's back. She has an interrupt on her alter ego side that says whenever you change to this form, you can choose a spell card in your discard pile and put it on top of your deck. We have a couple of spells that we got with the last couple Mystic Hero releases, and then there are a few more that are previewed in this article. But I kind of thought that, and maybe these are the cards we just haven't seen from her kit, I was assuming a significant number of spells, but we didn't get a lot. And so maybe we'll have a couple that work really well. There's one that works really, really well I'm really excited for. We'll talk about that here in a second. But I do think that, I guess I'm hoping that a lot of the cards in her kit that we have not seen yet are spells, so that we just have more options for this response. That's cool and all, but what gets super exciting is when you flip to the Magik side. So she has a 1/2/2 stat line with the Mystic and X-Men traded. But the cool part is that you play with the top card of your deck face up, and once per phase, you can play it as if it was in your hand and reduce its cost by 1. Crazy, crazy cool, and it reminds me of a very old friend. Before we get into our cards, I just want to talk about how freaking cool it is to have an X-Men Mystic character. The Mystic trait coming back allows you to bring all your old, like, really sweet cards like the Sorcerer Supreme, Spiritual Meditation, the Aspect Mystic cards. Those all get brought back into consideration when we are playing Magik, and then we can combine that with the X-Men cards that we have. And so the deck building potential here is really, really fun and crazy. But let's talk about some of her cards. As you probably would guess, her cards are going to mess with the top of her deck mechanic. I was really excited about that manipulation, having effectively a 6 hand size in hero form. I love the Gandalf hero from Lord of the Rings. I really enjoy that playstyle. And then I saw her 3 upgrades: Crown, armor, and soul sword. These are all upgrades. The crown costs 2, the other ones that cost 1, but they modify her stats based on the top card of your deck. So let's take crown for an example. She gets a basic benefit of gaining steady, and then also if the top card of her deck has a mental or a wild resource icon, she gets +1 thwart, so 2/2/2. Her armor gives her retaliate 1, and if it's a lightning, she gets +1 defense, and the soul sword has really cool art. That's awesome. And it gives her basic attacks piercing and +1 attack if the top card of your deck has a punch or a wild resource. So I'm thinking, how are we going to manipulate this to get a wild resource? Because if all of those upgrades are out, wild resource on the top of her deck, she becomes a 2/3/3 hero, which is very, very good. I like it. But if you were a little worried about the randomness of what that top card of your deck is, or how are you going to be able to like make sure you can get the right stat boost, we have a card called Limbo. Limbo is a 1-cost support. It has an action to exhaust it to swap a card in your hand with the top card of your deck. So Wizard's Pipe here. We now Magik. I just picture Magik smoking a big Gandalf's pipe. There's so much overlap with these two heroes, which is excellent. But okay, so yeah, you can swap a card with the top card of your deck. It also has a response on it that says after the villain phase begins, you can do the same thing. You can swap a card with the top card of your deck. So this can really set up like putting a wild on the top of your deck. Maybe it's a Digging Deep for the magic attacks of the world, right? So you're discarding cards. A lot of mystic cards are discarding cards. So they already liked some of the Digging Deeps and the White Foxes of the world. Now we can make sure that we are going to be discarding those cards. So it's kind of like a little bit of domino wrapped up in magic, but being able to make sure that you have the right stat boost. Ideally, it's a wild. Putting it on the top of your deck. Limbo. I am so excited for this character. She seems so incredibly fun. If that was not enough manipulation for you, you can use one of her events called Stepping Disc to fix it again. Stepping Disc is a 1-cost superpower event that readies magic, and then you can choose a magic card in your discard pile and put it on top of your deck. So I like to think about bearing like a wild card with this ability. So printed wild resource, if we have a wild resource on the top of our deck, we can attack for, let's say, 3 with Digging Deep. We can use Stepping Disc. We get to ready. We have a card that we want to play on the top of our deck now. We can play it and then attack again because Digging Deep is now revealed again. So there's a lot of manipulation. The sequencing with her, I think, is going to be fairly challenging, but also very satisfying when you're able to pull it off again. And so, yeah, you get 6 damage. You get a card for a discount of 1. I guess you profit at that point. It's going to be fun. She has a couple of cards that are really great targets for Stepping Disc, but the one that I'm most excited for is Scrying. It's a 0-cost spell, so it is a spell that allows us to maybe put it on the top of our deck when we flip down to Alter Ego. But you get to look at the top 3 cards of your deck. You draw one of those cards, discard one of those, and put one back on your deck. This is not locked to a hero action, so if we flip down, we put this on the top of our deck, we use like Weapon X or other card draw, we can draw it, then trigger the action in Alter Ego form. We don't have to be in hero form to use this. Mystics are going to be so good at getting the right cards that they need. We have Spiritual Meditation, we have Scrying. It seems really good. It seems really, really good. You can figure out exactly what you want, put the right card on the top of your deck, use her ability to pay for that card with a discount. It's going to be nice. The last card that we got in her kit is her signature ally, her older brother, Colossus. Colossus is a 3-cost 2/2/3 stat line, and of course he has toughness. He has to, right? He has a response, or he has an interrupt. It says when an enemy attacks you, you can play him from your hand and declare him as the defender without exhausting him. This is great because he has tough. You basically block that activation. And also, side note, you can play him from the top of your deck with your ability because you play as if that top card of your deck is in your hand. So you can still get this benefit if he's on the top card of your deck. And boom, 2-cost tough ally, block and activation. Now you have a 2/2/3 ally ready to go. It feels very similar to like his Armor Up card, and so I really appreciate, the parallels there. And if anything else, you can use her Stepping Disc to put him on top of your deck. He's a signature card with a wild resource to get all of your stat boost. I think she's really going to enjoy cards that mess with the top of her deck, and like Domino from the leadership aspect seem really exciting to play here. You can swap heck, Professor X onto the top of your deck, paying for 2 cost. I think she's going to be really fun in like the shield aspect where you have cards like Global Logistics that allow you to look at the top couple of cards and then discard or keep some of them to really kind of dial into exactly what you need to play. Digging Deep seems really good for Mystics with their aspect, discarding cards that kind of came in the archetype with like Warlock, where you have Magic Attack, where you discard cards, deal damage equal to the number of cards discarded that way. Throw Digging Deep in there. It just has a lot of really cool and interesting synergies, and out of the two, I am extremely hyped for Magik. I think Magik is going to be just right up my playstyle and something that I'm really interested in trying deck building for and playing. Bishop seems really cool. He seems like one of those heroes that I just don't understand conceptually, and I need to actually play him before I can give like, oh, he's going to be really good. And I think he's going to have a pretty high kind of skill curve to build for. But I'm sure that the deck builders in the world are going to come up with some crazy, crazy decks for both of these heroes. Let's talk about the aspect cards. We're going to talk about Leadership, which is going to come with Bishop, the Aggression, which is coming with Magik, and then we're going to talk about basic cards. So we're kind of delineating these sections like this. First up is Leadership. We have some new allies. Surprise. They look pretty cool. The first one we have is Cable. He's a 4 cost, 2 thwart, 3 attack with 2 consequentials on the attack, and 3 health. He has a response that after he thwarts and defeats a side scheme, you get to draw a card. We love drawing cards, and I really like the parallel with the heroes here as well. I feel like the allies and the heroes are doing a really good job of mirroring each other and having, different but similar abilities. I think that's pretty cool. Since he is X-Force traded, he's going to love the X-Force team-up card to bump him up to a 3 thwart. That clears a lot of the side schemes in solo. He's also going to be a fun Voltron target to help keep him alive, because as long as we're clearing side schemes, we are going to get to be drawing cards, and we like cards. X-23 is the other Leadership ally and feels fairly similar to Cable in the fact that she has a trigger when she defeats an enemy. She's a 3 cost, 1/3/3 stat line. X-Force traded as well. 3 attack is pretty sweet, especially in Leadership. And if you're in a crazy high minion scenario, she can get a ton of readies. She's going to be another fun Voltron target. I like Cable a little bit more, but I'm also excited to see what X-23 can do. Speaking of Voltroning allies, we have a new ally upgrade called the Advanced Suit. It's a 0 cost upgrade that can only be attached to an X-Force or an X-Men ally. After that attached ally defeats a minion or a side scheme, you can discard a card from your hand to heal 1 damage from that ally for each resource on that card. So this is going to be great for Bishop, who's probably going to have more resources than he knows what to do with, but also ally healing is pretty limited, and so just even discarding 1 resource is going to be a nice little benefit. It's effectively an innovation that doesn't pay for anything, but you can keep some of these high cost, high impact allies around for longer with this upgrade and just consistently heal them forever, as long as they're defeating either side schemes or minions. That being said, the most interesting Leadership card that we got, in my opinion, is called Sidekick. You attach it to an identity-specific ally you control, and they get +2 HP, and they become your sidekick. What that means is that after you make a basic recovery, you can heal 2 damage from the attached ally. This probably means I'm going to start recovering. I don't actually know. It's fun. It's cool. It's a cool way to incorporate a lesser used stat, and I'm going to be interested to hear what some of your favorite ideas for a sidekick are. Let me know in the comments. The first 2 that popped into my mind were Honey Badger for X-23 and then Captain Marvel for Spider-Woman. Those are just the 2 that popped into my mind. I thought about brainstorming more, but I think that would be kind of a fun discussion to have in the comments. So let me know who your top target for a sidekick is in the comments. While being a sidekick is really cool, keeping them around, you have this high impact ally that can now heal. It also comes with benefits with like a new event card that we got, which is Side by Side. This is a 2 cost event, allows you to ready you or it requires you to ready your sidekick. Then you can ready your hero, and then you can choose to either heal one from both characters, or they both get +1 thwart, +1 attack until the end of the phase. This card seems super fun. I want it for X23. I want it for Domino, because now we can trigger Probability Field. We can trigger Outlaw or Diamondbacks to attack again. I want it for a lot of heroes. My only concern here is that this is a dead card until you have that hero-specific ally in play. But if you're running a sidekick ally, you have to, well, actually, you have to have that ally in play as well as them having the sidekick trait. And so there's a little bit of setup for this benefit, and I'm not 100% sure that it's going to be able to pay off super frequently. Now, I'm sure that there are going to be ways to get specific cards, like if we go like Vision and Vivian, we have a lot of ways to recurve Vivian, and so we can get Vivian out there, keep her out there, get him as the sidekick, or get her as the sidekick. I don't know. It'll be a aspect or an archetype style of play that I'm really interested in trying out, but I'm not 100% sure how effective it's going to be, but it does seem fun. Magik came to us with an aggression precon and has some really cool cards in here as well. We got 2 new aggression allies previewed for us. The first one is Gold Balls. He's a 3-cost ally with a 1/1/3 stat line and an interrupt that says whenever he attacks, you discard up to 3 cards from the top of your deck and he gets +X, where X is equal to the number of cards discarded. Hello, digging deep in White Fox again. We got more cards. I have to say that I really am enjoying the whole discard / deck manipulation that we've gotten in the last few waves. I think that is just a really fun area of the game to explore, and I want more of it. But yeah, so I think that this getting up to a 4 attack is going to be really nice. If you have someone who's all about discarding cards already, we're going to love it. We're going to love him in that deck. The other ally that we got is Tempest. Sweet 2-cost ally. Love 2-cost allies, but you can only play Tempest if you have the X-Men trait. She has a 1/1/2 stat line, and she says that when the villain would scheme, you can discard Tempest and cancel the activation, and then you deal yourself 1 face down and counter card. It's an interesting design. I think she's going to be good mainly because she's a 2-cost ally. 2-cost allies are great. Play the 2-cost ally, attack, thwart, chump block. You're probably going to be happy with that efficiency. I'm not sure how often I'm going to use that interrupt. I guess she can like chump block for a scheme activation, but at the cost of an encounter card, 2-cost allies are good. Tempest is going to be fun to just throw in there for a block. We got a 1-cost upgrade called Blood Rage in this kit. It says that after you defeat an enemy with a basic attack, so a lot of qualifiers here, you can exhaust this, take a damage, and draw a card. I am not 100% sure how good this card is going to be. Cards in a card game is good, and I do like the design. I will say I do like the design because it's not an auto include by any means. It's really good for specific heroes that have high attacks or specific scenarios that have a lot of minions or enemies that you're going to be able to defeat very quickly. So I'm pumped to try and play this in specific heroes. I'm really excited for this in Hulk, where, you know, now he's swinging for 3, 4, 5 attack, and you're going to be able to draw some cards, which is going to be Hulk's weakness or Hulk's downfall. I think it's going to be a nice multiplayer card where there's going to be a lot more minions around to take out and make sure that you can ping and take out or take down. Spider-Ham is always interesting whenever you're dealing yourself damage, because then you generate resources, so you get a card draw and a resource. And so there are going to be some cases where this is going to be really fun. I'm sure I'm missing someone. Wolverine is probably going to be great with it. He has a lot of healing in his kit. Let me know who you're excited to run this in. But it seems like a well-designed card, because it's not going to be, oh my gosh, that is so freaking good. But it's also not like, I'm never going to run this. It's going to be like, this is going to be really good for this specific hero or this situation. And I am excited to see more cards in that formula. We got another 4-cost attack event called Full Body Charge. This is a event where you deal 8 damage to an enemy, and if your HP is less than half of your starting hit points, then it gets overkill. So this is really fun to combo with the new card that we're getting in X23 called Now I'm Mad. I'm excited to run into this type of playstyle and see how it works, where you're reducing your health down below your half. Totally out of my comfort zone, but it seems interesting, and I'm hoping that we get some more cards to mess with it. Also, anytime I see an expensive red card, my mind goes to Hone Technique. So Full Body Charged is slightly under the efficiency curve if you ignore the overkill keyword, but with Hone Technique, you're getting 12 damage for 5 effective resource, and if nothing else, that's just fun. It's big numbers in this game is exciting. So 12 damage for 5 effective resources, yeah, I'm going to take that. The last aggression card that we got today is a 1-cost upgrade called Test the Defense. This has a response on it that says after you play an attack event, place 1 test counter here. Then, if there are 5 test counters here, you can discard this card to deal 5 damage to an enemy. I'm interested in this card. I'm not 100% sure it's good. 5 events is a lot. And that's where my concern comes in, is how frequently am I going to be playing 5 events after I put this card onto the table? If I get it in turn 1, there's a good chance I can, but a lot of my games are over in 5 turns, and maybe this is a finishing card. You keep it around. It's a nice card to just have ready to go. I have a lot of kind of questions around this card on how frequently we're gonna get it into a deck, which again, going back to the previous discussion, is a really well-designed card, because now we're not auto-including it, but we are going to be building around specific heroes. The hero that popped into my mind for this is Gamora. Gamora has a lot of really inexpensive attack events, which is going to power this up. We also, now I want to revisit Gamora regardless, because we have Lock and Load that can get out her sword, which is a little bit more expensive than I want to play, but we have better ways to get it into play. So now whenever we play an attack event, we're dealing, thwart, we're dealing a damage with their sword, we're putting a charge counter here. So there's or test counter, charge counter, whatever counter it is. There's a lot of kind of synergy going on with Gamora, and so I think that she may be the first one that I break out into like an old hero new trick with Gamora and this. So yeah. Last section of the video, we're going to be talking about our basic cards. We have 2 new allies in basics and some other toys that are kind of geared towards the mystic characters. First ally that we're going to be talking about is Legion. Legion's a 3-cost 1/1/3 psionic ally. So Cerebro, nice. That has a response. After you use a basic power, you discard the top card of your deck. If it has a printed lightning, you deal 2 damage to an enemy. Printed mental, 2 threat. And a printed physical, you can heal 2 damage from Legion. This is interesting that it's coming in Bishop's Precon, when I think it's going to be really good for Magik. So maybe just swap those 2 around. And I think he'll be fun. It's interesting that like wilds don't trigger anything, but that's kind of fine because Domino is running out of ally slots anyways. But with all the deck manipulation that we have, being able to see the top card of your deck if you're running Magik, we have a lot of things that we can build Legion around. Run him alongside Domino, and you can get the threat, the damage, or the healing that you need. Plus, having a psionic character that wants to stay on the table is great for our mutants to start triggering Cerebro. The next card, I think, is the better of the 2 basic allies, but slightly less exciting than Legion, is Morrow. Mainly, I think he's better because he's a 2-cost ally. 2-cost allies are good. He's a 1/2/2 stat line, and you can only play him if he has the X-Force or the X-Men trait, so you do have a little bit of limitations on what decks you can put him in, but he has a response that says after he enters play, deal 2 damage to an enemy. So for 3 effective resources, you get 4 damage and a jump block. Yeah, I'm going to be running Morrow. I don't necessarily have too much more to say about that. He's going to be good. The 2 cards that we got that are mainly I guess only for mystic characters. The first one is Blood Gem. It's a 0-cost upgrade that can only include 1 copy in your deck. And so we have a couple more, and I think a lot of the mystic cards actually revolve around this idea that you can only have 1 copy of each one of these cards in your deck. But as a resource action, you can exhaust this card, take 2 damage, and generate a wild resource. It seems pretty decent. A lot of the mystics are already fairly rich, So I'm not 100% sure. I am most excited to run this in like Warlock, where that damage is not the end of the world because he can heal it all with Soul World. And so I think it'll be a good card. It's a nice zero cost upgrade to also just put on the table, thin out the deck. A lot of the Mystics like to thin their deck as well. So I will run it. It's a good card. I'm really excited for it in Warlock. The last card of the day that we're going to be talking about is our basic spell. You can only play this if you have the Mystic trait. It's a 2-cost event that allows you to either heal 3 damage, remove 3 threats, or deal 3 damage to an enemy. I love the flexibility that you're getting. You're giving up efficiency for flexibility, but I do think that'll be okay in a lot of situations. I also really appreciate and enjoy the fact that we're getting some more healing cards. In a couple of days, we're going to be getting the Protection Archetype video, and I didn't talk about healing just because we don't have a ton of healing cards, but I like to see that side of the game starting to get fleshed out. The last thing I'm going to leave you all with is that we got a preview of some new heroes from the upcoming wave. They gave us a silhouette, which is something that they have started doing, and I'm curious who you think you see in the silhouette. Who should we be expecting to see in our upcoming wave? Here's the silhouette. These are the characters. Who do you think they're going to be? Let me know in the comments. Thank you all so much for watching. I appreciate you all. You all are amazing. If you want, you can go ahead and follow and subscribe to make sure that you don't miss the villain video coming out, and as well as the creative live stream that are coming out next week. But yeah, until then, get hyped. It's happening. Age of Apocalypse is here, and I will see you around. Peace.